Afternoon, how are you? Well, once again the 60s, very nice. We got a lot of sun, no wind, and these are the times when we have the scent of war. And the question is the war that seems so imminent avoidable? And it seems not. When I was in high school, I did a lot of oratorical contests, and I had one speech in particular that seemed to catch on, and there was one section of it, and it was that Khrushchev and Russia were against us. It's going back, isn't it? And in the speech, I would say Khrushchev turned his body toward the West, toward America and us, wagged a pudgy finger and said, "We shall bury you." And at the time, that prompted quite a reaction in America against him. And here we are again, many years later, and Putin said last night in Russia that basically what this is it's about the border between Russia and the United States. See, he's always wanted to make this about between him and Biden or whomever was the unfriendly American president. But what he's done is he's made it specifically about Biden because, like every wrestling match, he wants to have a bigger opponent, and he wants to speak in terms of the world stage, how this is not succeeding. That is to say, our method of approaching this is not the way he thinks it should go. That we should have people telling him what to do by having Ukraine and NATO. So what did he actually do? He's, I think, looking down the years of history, and he sees Biden and the others like Neville Chamberlain. That is, trying to appease him so that we would avoid further conflict by conceding what conflict this means, Ukraine. And we should have learned before that this didn't work. Now, when this was true with Neville Chamberlain and Churchill and others succeeded because when they saw that Hitler could not be trusted, they needed to get on their war paint. And we have thought that we could do this without putting on our war paint, that we could appease him, that we could have meetings and work out details. But what he did last night was he made it very clear that he's treating the separatists as beleaguered and seeking his support. And they're seeking his support in Donetsk and, forgive my pronunciation, Luhansk. And these are the People's Republic, and they are the Russians. And they are under siege by the Ukrainians who seek support from NATO and the West. So he sees, well, Zelensky as a puppet of the West, of a person who wants to be NATO. And he does not want NATO on the borders of Russia. And he sees that line, when it is on the borders of Russia, he sees it as Biden, not as Zelensky. He sees NATO as the United States and Biden. And that's what he's telling his people. And he set up a situation in which he can expand his military operation in Donetsk and in Luhansk. And that's his operating plan for that. But the secondary part of his plan is to say, if there is any military shelling or attacking coming from the western part of Ukraine, coming from Kiev, then they will have to defend Russia against that. And he sees the massing, if you can call the troops that we've sent there a mass, as compared to his people spread out 190,000 people on the 3 borders of Ukraine. He sees that massing as a further threat. And it wasn't Putin who said this was a border with America, but it was one of his top advisors and a former bodyguard. And he talked about it. So you see, the stakes are going up at a time when we're only prepared to squeeze this nation economically. And they've decided they can take that. And the only thing they can understand is force. And the only thing that we're not prepared to do is force. So the outcome has to be unsatisfactory. And I think of Carter when in the primaries he did well because he was fighting against the holding of hostages in Iran. But now we have a situation in which, like Carter, when Carter, after the primaries, still day by day went on, and he couldn't solve that crisis. And so he was perceived as failing as a leader. And there were some dirty tricks involved to enhance that, but that's part of it. Now we have Biden, who is going to be trying to tell us, if the war goes forward, that we did the best that we could. We talked our way into a situation that seemed inevitable and was inevitable, as it led to warfare in Ukraine, to the disadvantage and suffering of the Ukraine people. And the greatest mass of land and of military force was put on the field in Eastern Europe, the greatest number and the greatest mass since World War II. This is not something we can ignore. No one wants to get into a fight. As a kid, although when I was in a street fight, I kind of enjoyed it, but that's a big difference. This is not something in which somebody gets a little black and blue marks. This changes the lines between nation states. This causes people to flee. It causes suffering and death, separation, causes uncertainty in business in the world. And it seems to me that the only way we could avoid what appears to be the imminent conflict is to actually say, look, we're going to fight about this because this matters. But we didn't have the capital at home to back up that threat. That's the perception. We withdrew from Afghanistan. Our people have become comfortable in their conflict, and we don't have a unity of a nation to go to war, or even a belief or understanding why one may be necessary. So that's I know it's a pretty pessimistic view, but that's the best I can do today. So talk to you tomorrow. Bye-bye.